Have you ever noticed that the moment you start thinking differently, your family seems to turn on you? Maybe you set a boundary for the first time, or you chose a different path than what was expected. Suddenly, the people who claim to love you most are the ones criticizing, mocking, or outright attacking your choices. It's confusing, it hurts, and it leaves you wondering if something is wrong with you for wanting to grow. Here's what's actually happening. When you change your perspective or break away from old patterns, you're not just changing yourself. You're disrupting an entire system that's been running on autopilot for years, maybe even generations. The attacks aren't really about you at all. They're about what your growth represents to them. In the next few minutes, we're going to explore 5 psychological reasons why families react this way when you start thinking differently. And once you understand these dynamics, you'll see that their resistance reveals their limitations, not yours. By the end of this video, you won't just understand their behavior, you'll have the psychological armor you need to stay authentic without feeling like you're constantly under fire. If you felt like you're losing your mind, you're not. You're just the only one in the room who stopped acting. The first reason is actually hidden in the smallest habits of your daily life. Things so normal, you don't even realize they're unwritten rules until you try to break one. It's what I call the comfort zone trap. Reason 1. The comfort zone trap. Every family operates with a set of unwritten rules. There's a rhythm to how things work. Who speaks first at dinner? Who gets to be emotional and who has to stay calm? What topics are off limits? What roles everyone plays? These patterns create a predictable environment, and even when that environment is unhealthy, it feels safe because it's familiar. When you start thinking differently, you're disrupting that rhythm. You're breaking the unwritten rules. And suddenly, the predictable world everyone depends on feels unstable. The family doesn't consciously sit down and decide to attack you. It's more like an automatic response. Their internal alarm goes off, signaling that something is wrong, and they instinctively try to pull you back into line to restore the balance they know. You're at a family dinner. Your aunt offers you a second helping like she always does. But this time, you politely say, "No thank you, I'm full." The table goes quiet. She insists. You decline again. Now there's tension. Someone mutters under their breath about kids these days being too picky. Another family member jumps in with, "Remember when you used to love this dish? What happened to you?" They're not upset about the food. They're upset because you broke the unwritten rule that you always accept what's offered. You stepped outside the role they assigned you, and that threatens the predictable rhythm they depend on. Think of it like this. The old script says, "I'll eat the food so you don't feel rejected." The new script says, "I'm full, and my physical comfort matters more than your tradition." That shift is small to you, but it's an earthquake to them. Even a toxic normal feels safer than the unknown. When you change, you're asking them to step into that unknown with you, which terrifies them. But there's a second reason that's much more personal. It's the reason why your healing feels like an attack to them, and it has everything to do with a mirror they aren't ready to look into. Reason 2. The mirror effect. Have you ever noticed that when you start doing something healthy for yourself, certain family members call you selfish or dramatic? They act like you're the problem for wanting to grow. Here's what's really happening. Your growth holds up a mirror to the people around you. When you start setting boundaries, it highlights the boundaries they've never set. When you choose to heal old wounds, it reminds them of the wounds they've been avoiding. When you make choices that prioritize your well-being, it reflects back all the times they didn't do the same for themselves. They're confronted with their own unlived potential, their own unaddressed pain. Instead of looking inward, they project that discomfort onto you. It's a defense mechanism. By making you the problem, they don't have to face their own shame. Now I want to pause here. This doesn't mean your family is evil. It means they are human beings who are terrified of their own reflection. You can have compassion for that fear while still refusing to be the mirror they break. Here's a common example. You mention you've started therapy and had a breakthrough about a childhood pattern. Your parent immediately gets defensive. "We did the best we could. Why are you digging up the past?" That response isn't about therapy. It's about what your healing implies, that something was broken, that they either contributed to it or failed to fix it. Your growth becomes a mirror they don't want to look into. Reason 3, protecting the family story. Every family has a story they tell themselves. It's the narrative that defines who you all are. Maybe it's, we're a strong family, we don't complain. Or, we always put family first no matter what. Or, we're successful, we don't fail. These stories get passed down and reinforced over years, sometimes over generations. And everyone in the family learns their part in that story. If the unwritten rules are the daily chores of the family story is the Constitution. It's much harder to change, and the penalty for breaking it is much higher. Here's why they guard it so fiercely. When you start thinking differently, you're rewriting the script. You're saying, I don't agree with that story anymore. This creates cognitive dissonance, the discomfort of holding two conflicting beliefs. They believe the family story is true, but your different perspective suggests it might not be. Instead of questioning the story, which would require rethinking their entire identity, they attack you. Because if the story falls apart, who are they? But here's the freedom you gain from understanding this. The moment you realize this is just a story they need to believe, you're no longer obligated to be a character in it. You gain the freedom to define yourself on your own terms. Here's how this plays out. You come from a family that prides itself on loyalty. Family comes first, always. But you've realized this loyalty often meant ignoring harmful behavior. So you decide to skip Thanksgiving this year for your mental health. You need space. The response is immediate. You're labeled selfish, disloyal, the one who abandoned the family. One relative says, I can't believe you're choosing yourself over us, as if choosing yourself is the ultimate betrayal. They're not attacking you because you're wrong. They're attacking you because you're threatening the story that holds their identity together. This next reason explains why the family system actually depends on you staying exactly as you are. When you change, you're not just changing yourself. You're removing the safety valve that keeps the whole family from boiling over. Reason 4, losing their safety valve. In many families, one person becomes the emotional outlet for everyone else. They're labeled the sensitive one or the problem child. But what's really happening is they're unconsciously carrying the stress and unresolved conflicts of the entire family system. Imagine the family is a pressure cooker. Usually, you're the one holding the steam release valve open. When you let go, the pressure doesn't just disappear, it starts rattling the lid. That rattling is the attack you're feeling right now. Psychologists call this the scapegoat role. When tension builds, instead of addressing real issues, the family redirects everything onto one person. That person absorbs the blame. In a twisted way, this relieves everyone else. They don't have to look at their own problems because they've found someone to carry them. When you refuse to play that role anymore, the family loses their safety valve. They lose the person who's been absorbing all the pressure. Where does the stress go now? The attack isn't about you doing something wrong. It's about them not knowing how to function without you in that position. You've always been blamed when gatherings go badly, but now you're recognizing the pattern. You refuse to take responsibility for problems that aren't yours. You stop apologizing for things you didn't cause. The family escalates. They criticize you more, trying harder to push you back into that familiar role because without it, they'd have to face the real dysfunction. Reason 5. The fear of being left behind. Here's a practical tool that changes everything. The next time you feel that familiar pressure being redirected onto you, pause and ask yourself one question. Whose emotion am I actually carrying right now? Is this my anxiety or theirs? This isn't just a question, it's your exit strategy from the family's emotional chaos. It allows you to walk into a room, feel the tension, and realize none of it belongs to you. That small moment of clarity can help you separate their discomfort from your responsibility. Everything we've discussed so far, the rules, the mirrors, the stories, and the pressure, leads to one final primitive fear. It's the deepest reason they lash out, and once you see it, you'll finally understand why they're actually more afraid of your growth than you are. Beneath all the criticism, there's often a deeper fear your family can't articulate. Your evolution feels like abandonment. When you start thinking differently, it signals you're outgrowing the family unit, and that triggers a primitive fear of losing connection. Now, understanding this fear doesn't excuse harmful behavior. You can have compassion for their fear while still protecting yourself from their attacks. These two things aren't mutually exclusive. They don't know how to say, "We're scared of losing you." So that fear comes out sideways, as mockery, as silence, as aggression. Here's what this looks like. You're having a conversation and you use a phrase you learned in therapy. Something like, "I'm not comfortable discussing this right now," or "I need to set a boundary here." The room shifts. Someone laughs. Another person says, "Listen to you with your therapy talk. You sound brainwashed." Or they call you too sensitive, like you've become fragile by learning to protect yourself. That mockery isn't indifference, it's fear. They're watching you step into a world they can't access, using a language they don't speak, and they're terrified of what that means for your relationship. Now you have the psychological armor we talked about at the start. When your family attacks you for thinking differently, you can see it for what it really is. Their limitations, not yours. And because you see their limitations, you no longer have to wait for their permission to be yourself. You're not the problem for wanting to grow. You're just the only one in the room who stopped acting. Here's what you gain from understanding these 5 reasons. You reclaim the energy you've been spending trying to keep everyone comfortable. That energy can finally go toward your own life. You get to stay authentic without carrying shame that was never yours. And you realize that their resistance reveals where they're stuck, not where you're wrong. If these dynamics feel overwhelming, reach out to a professional who can help you navigate them. But know this, you aren't alone in breaking the script. Which of these 5 reasons was the biggest light bulb moment for you? Was it the comfort zone trap? The mirror effect? Drop a comment and let us know. It helps to see you're not the only one rewriting the family story. If you're ready to join a community of people who are done playing roles they never auditioned for, hit subscribe. Thank you for supporting our mission to make psychology more accessible. And as always, thanks for watching.